Shalom, Yasharala Shalom. It's the brother Aj coming back in the spirit, giving all praises to Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai. And a mighty Shalom to the hopeful elect scattered across the four winds of the earth, man. Much love to y'all, brothers. So anyways, man, I want to get into a lesson, probably going to be titled, Why Egyptian versus Egyptian Must Happen. Why, civil unrest and eventually civil war must come upon America, Mystery Babylon, whatever you want to call it. The other day, I was actually watching a video from this man, I think his name is Reupload, and he had a book came out called Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order. And I actually watched the YouTube video. The reason why I didn't pull up the YouTube video is kind of long, and also my internet it lags, so I can't really screen record. Otherwise, it's going to be like delayed 1 to 2 seconds. So I just want to pull this up because when you brothers come into the fold, and as you brothers start to understand prophecy on a greater scheme, you understand that in order for a nation to fall, it has to have a lot of division, a lot of conflict in it. Because let's actually just pull out the scripture, because it's been prophesied by the prophets, it's been prophesied by Yahushai, and Yahushai oftentimes spoke about as his second coming came, there will be more and more division, not only just among those who are of the circumcision, but just people in general. You see, let's get this real quick. We'll go to the book of Matthew chapter 24. We'll go to verse 6. It says, "You shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." So when you brothers understand and you come into the truth, and you realize that this thing isn't a unifier, for the most part, it's a great divider. As these things start to come into the forefront, abortion, gun control, left versus right, conservatism versus liberalism, rich versus poor, race wars and things like that, they are all spiritually prophetic to happen. As America has started to go, you've noticed from the time of George W. Bush to Obama to Trump especially, but now even this times in Joe Biden, there's a lot of civil unrest, there's a lot of chaos, because essentially you're seeing the cracks. Because you have to picture America as a river that has a dam. You know how a dam, when it's first built, is sturdy, it can hold back a ton of amount of water, right? But as the bridge starts to erode, it gets weaker and weaker and weaker. You start to see little cracks, and then driplets come out, and then more driplets come out, and then a big crack comes, but they try to seal it with like some sticky glue or something like that, right? And eventually the dam cracks all the way. The water starts to let go more and more until the entire wall collapses. Well, essentially, that's just symbolic. The wall is what binds this nation together. And the water is the immense flood, the amount of chaos that are going to come upon the average American, just average global citizen. So you brothers got to understand that these things are going to happen. And a lot of these things are controlled. Obviously, the left hand is controlled by the Heavenly Father, that being the wicked, that being the high-ranking elites of Esau, Edom, and, other nations of families, but particularly the Edomite, right? The Amalekites, right? So you have to understand the reason why gun laws and things like that happen is because this is 2022. We have primaries, many senators, many congressmen. They're trying to get them out and put a new guard who are more progressive. Specifically in the state that I live in Texas, they're trying to get the Governor Abbott out. So what they're doing is they're setting up many different psyops. They're setting up many different events, whether they can be real, but a lot of times these things are staged. Now, when you're in the truth, you're going to think damn near everything's staged, because that's just how we think. But you have to understand that a lot of these things are being set up by the government, just like 9/11, just like, I can get into a lot of many other different things. So you have to understand that the wicked, they're deceivers, great deceivers. And as they start to come up with these different political views and moral views, quote unquote religious views, you're going to start to see them bring it more and more on the forefront as America starts to fail more and more and more. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because when you read this book and you watch this video, the author, he was basically laying out the 4 type of things that must occur. Because basically what he did is he studied a lot of the not ancient, but medieval empires. The Dutch Empire, the British Empire, the current American Empire. And, he obviously, when you're in the world, you can see that China, the Moabites, they're the ones who are quote unquote supposed to take the reign per se. But y'all brothers understand that Esau is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning. And when you have a spiritual eye and you can see things from a spiritual lens, you understand that that's what's to come if you have faith. If you're a non-believer, you think you're going to be ruled over by a Moabite. But if you are a true man of faith and you really believe in the things stated in the Bible, you understand that our kingdom is to come. But, basically, long story short, he was speaking on how, the world order is changing. And as America starts to, develop more and more chaos, is leading the signs for rulership. You've been seeing a lot of people speak about New World Order, New World Order, New World Order, the changing guard. And basically, when he broke down those 4 principles, there is one thing right now. There is one thing in particular, right? So I want to read right here. It says, and I'll highlight it, the parts that I'm reading. And let me actually expand it a little bit. Put it to like 150. Alright, here you go, right here. It says, all the empires and dynasties I studied rose and declined when a classic big cycle that has clear markers that allow us to see where we are in it. The big cycle produces swings between peaceful and prosperous periods of great creativity and productivity that raise living standards a lot. And we look at the history of Mystery Babylon, aka the United States of America, that peaceful period really started after the Civil War. America had growing pains, they got much land, they had the Mexican-American War, the Spanish-American War. They had different little events, within the late 1800s, but particularly in the early 1900s is when their creativity, the innovation of this country really prospered, right? And then number 2, Depression, Revolution, and war periods, when there is a lot of fighting over wealth and power and a lot of destruction of wealth, life, and other things we cherish. Now, when you look at Depression, Revolution, and war periods, the key aspect of the world with the Depression and war period was what? World War II. You had obviously the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, many things that caused a lot of, how do I put this the right way? A very low standard of living for damn near a decade until World War II came. But y'all brothers obviously understand that at that time period, that was the end of the British Empire, particularly the British, the French, the German rulership. Those empires were dissolved, and obviously America became the quote-unquote New World Order, right? You see, they became the top dog, the top hunky, you know what I'm saying, in the world, right? But key point is this. What time period are we living in right now? What are brothers speaking on? How there's going to be a massive recession and potentially a depression, right? A revolution. How do you see that? You see, a lot of powers like Russia, a lot of powers like China coming out of the woodwork, right? Coming into the understanding that America's getting weak, and obviously war periods. You brothers understand that the third woe cometh quickly, World War III, when there is a lot of fighting over wealth and power and a lot of destruction of wealth, life, and other things we cherish. And brothers, we are coming into a very, very, very dark time. In particular, the wealth of the average day American and just the low and the middle income is getting decimated. These huge companies are making billions and billions and trillions of dollars, while y'all barely getting by off $12, $15 an hour. I seen some on a post from the Shade Room where they said the average median income in America for a 1-bedroom apartment is going to rise over $2,000 for the first time in history. So who's going to get affected by inflation the most? Who's going to get affected by rising food costs, lack of jobs? They're talking about stagflation. The people at the bottom, in particular you Jakes, but just the average modern day American, the average East Edomite, the average Moabite, anybody in this country is going to have to deal with that. And as these things happen, there's going to be a lot more chaos between the different groups of nations, which is going to do what? Is going to speed up the destruction of this country, right? So fighting over wealth, power, and a lot of destruction of wealth, life, and other things we cherish. Let's go down to the second paragraph. It says, around the upward trend of productivity, gains the produce, rising wealth, and better living standards, there are cycles that produce prosperous periods of building in which the country is fundamentally strong because there are relatively low levels of indebtedness, which is debt, relatively small wealth gaps, values, and political gaps. People working effectively together to produce prosperity, good education, infrastructure, strong, capable leadership, in a peaceful world order that is guided by one or more dominant world powers. And let's just read it back. low levels of debt, right? Small wealth gaps, values, small wealth gaps, small value gaps, small political gaps. People working together to produce prosperity. Now, when you look at modern time America, bro, we're what, $30 trillion debt with the government, over 130 or $40 trillion of consumer debt. The wealth gap is as far apart as it's ever been. The value gap, political gap, what are they saying? Bipartisanship. Education is shit. Infrastructure is shit. You go different roads, there's potholes damn near everywhere. They're doing all this construction, but nothing ever seems to get fixed. Again, strong and capable leadership. The last 4 presidents have been god awful, horrible. In a peaceful world order, and you see that peaceful world order where America and Britain and the United Nations, they ran things with an iron fist. Now you see China bucking up. Now you see Russia bucking up. Now you see Korea bucking up. And don't get it twisted, the elites understand these things, but on a 2D aspect, you can see how everything is being shaped up for a transition period, right? So it says, these are the prosperous and enjoyable periods when they are taken to excess, which they always are. The excess lead to depressing periods of destruction and restructuring, in which the country's fundamental weaknesses of high levels of indebtedness, large wealth gaps, values, political gaps, different factions of people unable to work together, pouring from blah, 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 blah. And we'll go down. It says, struggle to maintain an overextended empire under the challenge of emerging rivals lead to a painful period of fighting, destruction, and then a restructuring that establishes a new world order, setting the stage for a new period of building. The stats in my model suggest that the US is roughly 70% through its big cycle, plus or minus 10%. The United States has not yet crossed the line into the 6th phase of a civil war / revolution, when active fighting begins, but the internal conflict is high and rising. So this guy, when he did his study, he said that US, they're towards the part where there's going to be civil war and civil unrest, but it hasn't happened yet. And I'll tell you, brothers, the jab, what's going on with the economy, what's going on with these different debates, the traditionalism. You know, think about this, right? The Supreme Court, they purposely abolished what? Abortion, right? Mass things. You've been seeing all these psyops with a lot of these shooters. A massive outrage. And then pretty soon, inflation. What do most people say? We gotta tax the rich. And what do the rich say? You gotta work. You know what I'm saying? So you see how things are coming. So it's shown through the fold that the United States, bruh, there's about to be massive civil unrest between the people. Now let's go back into the scriptures, right? So Matthew 10, and we'll go down to verse 34. So let's go into Matthew 10, and we'll go to verse 34, right? What does it say? It says, it says, think not I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. So as Yahushua makes his second coming, and it gets closer and closer to that time period, the peace is going to become more and more division, more and more strife. Verse 35. For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, the daughter against her mother, the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foe shall be there, his own household. It's like I got hiccups. It's kind of ironic too, because somebody in the world, one of my friends, good friends in the world, actually reached out to me before I did this video, and we were actually talking about, you know, how we just had differences in opinions. You see, as these things come up, as it becomes clearer and clearer with the Lord's elect, and just even, you know, other heathens who see kind of what's going on like a financial and you know, governmental tip, there's going to be more variance. There's going to be more people who choose to follow the delusions of what's going on, and more people who are going to start to wake up and smell the coffee. You see what I'm saying? So that's going to cause more fragmentation, and the elites know this. The elites obviously know this. So they're going to set up more things to continue to splinter each other, because you have to understand this as well. Let's go to the book of Matthew, and we'll go to 12 and verse 25, right? So Matthew 12 and 25, it says, and Yahushua knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And you see what's going on. The kingdoms of the United Nations, even the kingdom of America, in every city, every house is being red, blue. division. Even though obviously these political leaders, they understand what's going on, they're playing their role perfectly. There's a lot of people who are in with China. There's a lot of people who truly believe that America can be saved. But at the ultimate end of the day, the spirit of division is coming through and it's causing the minds of the people to be at odds and at variance. So during these times, brothers, you're going to see a lot more unrest, a lot more civil unrest, a lot more psyops happening, and a lot of more natural insurrections of different groups in America, the quote-unquote big melting pot, right? Start to come at war and at variance with one another. And as a sign that this kingdom is damn near almost done. You see what I'm saying? So it's a great thing for us because through the faith that we have in the promise of Abraham, Isaac, and eventually through the seed of Jacob, we understand that the more this country goes down the shitter, the closer we are to the second coming of Yahweh Shah Mashiach, and Lord willing, we be a part of his elect. You see what I'm saying? But when it comes down to it, as things get more and more chaotic, there's going to be more hell that brothers and sisters are going to go through. And you have to understand that. Another great prophecy that we can get is in the book of Isaiah. We'll go to chapter 19 and we'll start at verse 2. I'll read verse 1. It says, "The burden of Egypt, behold, Yahweh riseth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. And I will set Egyptian against Egyptian, and they shall fight everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom." So it's prophesied that spiritual Egypt, which is this place, will constantly fight with one another. All the different races, all the different groups are going to constantly be at variance with one another. And ultimately, at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of emotional turmoil. A lot of people are going to separate. A lot of y'all brothers been dealing with people that you had to separate because as you come into the truth, you realize they don't see things the same way. They don't believe in things the same way. And ultimately, when you're a man of the Lord, you're not meant to be a sweet savor. You're not meant to be a sweet drink, a sweet taste to the vast majority of people around you. So you're going to isolate yourself with people. It's just natural. As you start to grow in the spirit, grow in the truth, and gain more wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, the people that you once knew and loved, even if you live with them, or you're going to start to notice that that barrier between one another is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, getting back into the point, let me see if I want to read any of this. I'll read through. It says, "Ultimately, it would be wise for leaders and citizens of both countries to recognize that the U.S. and China are in a competition of systems and abilities. Each will inevitably follow the system that they believe works best for them. Americans have a slight lead in power, but it is shrinking and they're outnumbered. And history has shown that while numbers of people can matter a lot, other factors matter more. So even small population empires become leading world powers that manage themselves well." And I'll just go down right here. It says, "The internal wars and challenges in both China and the US are more important and bigger than external wars and challenges. These include political wars within the leadership of the country and at all levels of government. Wars between different factions, the rich and the poor, the rural and the urban, conservative and progressive, ethnic groups, demographic changes, climate change." Slacky. I didn't mean to go down that far. "Fortunately, the most important of these factors are within our control and measurable, which allows us to see how we are doing, and if we're not doing well, to make changes so these things move in the right direction. By and large, we will get what we deserve. As Churchill said to the British people, deserve victory." So I just want to read that because, again, man, the Lord is putting a spirit of division on this land. The rich and the poor, the rural and the urban, conservatives and progressive, ethnic groups, demographic changes, which is why a lot of these Western countries, they've been getting a lot of immigrants from Africa, from different nations, because they're trying to flood in. And to be real with you, bro, that's the reason why we had George W. Bush, right? He kind of started things off, but particularly with Obama, he's the one who set a lot of division amongst the Democrats. And Trump's job was to ultimately create a huge barrier gap, because the name Trump has a mind control, has a psychological programming on people who are of the left, to just get mad and get angry. So, if you brothers watch a video from Truth Unedited, I don't listen to him for scriptural advice, but just getting understanding on the coming divide. He laid it out perfectly, a perfect example that these things are going to get horrible and horrible and horrible by the day. So just something for you brothers to understand, especially if you're newer to the faith. It's just a part of this understanding. and it's something that has to happen in order for our kingdom to come. So with that being said, brothers, I hope the lesson was edifying. Hope you brothers got something out of it. I give all praises to Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai. Until next time, it's the brother Ash Ibad signing out.